After a plane crash, Brian embarks on a perilous journey through zombie-infested desert, with nothing but weapons from a floating cargo box. The story begins with the last rescue plane of survivors from a zombie outbreak in West Africa. Brian, a U.S. Air Force engineer, is among those on board the evacuation plane. One of the survivors is bitten by a zombie and is dying, leaving his wife devastated. As the plane runs low on fuel, chaos erupts when the bitten man dies. A soldier attempts to shoot him in the head, but the man's wife intervenes. Suddenly, the infected man turns into a zombie and bites the soldier's hand. The soldier kills the zombie, but then takes his own life to avoid turning into one. As the plane gets ready to crash land, we see zombies attacking a nearby village. The scene is gruesome, with many villagers brutally killed, and even the military fails to control the situation. A mother and her young son try to hide, but the mother is caught and killed by a zombie. The boy manages to escape and finds safety in an army truck that drives away from the chaos. After the plane crash, Brian clings to a floating cargo box and eventually reaches the shore. He spots a group of zombies heading his way, so he opens the box, arms himself with weapons, and shoots the nearby zombies. Then, he flees into the forest to avoid further danger. Meanwhile, a soldier named Daniel returns home to find his wife's remains. It's revealed that he is the father of the boy who escaped earlier. Elsewhere, Brian changes into his military uniform and looks at a picture of his family. As he moves through tall grass, he hears a strange sound and tries to leave the area, but he suddenly encounters a zombie. After a short fight, Brian manages to kill it. At the same time, Daniel finds a survivor in the village and asks about his son. He is relieved to learn his son escaped, but the survivor dies and turns into a zombie, and Daniel is forced to kill her to protect himself. Meanwhile, Brian finds himself surrounded by mountains and endless land. He discovers an abandoned car and tries to start it, but it has no fuel. Luckily, he finds some gasoline, fills the tank, and starts repairing the car. However, he doesn't notice a group of zombies approaching. One attacks him, but Brian shoots it just in time. He quickly gets the car running and escapes, but the car breaks down in a ditch. While trying to clear the path, zombies attack him again. Out of bullets, and on the brink of being killed, Brian is saved by Daniel, who shoots the zombies and helps free the car. Daniel checks if Brian has been bitten, and once satisfied he's safe, agrees to travel with him. During the ride, Daniel talks about finding his son, and expresses anger at the Americans for abandoning his people. Brian explains that he is just an engineer with no allegiance to any country. Brian asks if there's an airbase nearby, and Daniel promises to guide him there in exchange for the car. Along the way, they discover an abandoned house smeared with blood. They cautiously explore the area and are suddenly startled by a group of horrifying zombies. The two men shoot down the zombies and step inside the house. Brian notices some drugs near the bodies and decides to take them, thinking they might be useful later. After leaving the house, they continue their journey by car. However, the car runs out of fuel, forcing them to abandon it. Daniel expresses faith that they can reach the airbase on foot, and Brian reluctantly agrees to follow him. When they arrive at the airbase, it is in a state of ruin. Brian enters an office and uses his flashlight to navigate through dark and eerie hallways. While searching the area, he hears a strange noise and notices something unusual, but his flashlight briefly flickers off. As he quickly switches it back on, a decayed zombie lunges at him. After a desperate struggle, Brian finds a fire extinguisher and smashes the zombie's head into pieces. Meanwhile, Daniel refuels the car while Brian heads to the communication tower to use the radio. Unfortunately, he fails to contact anyone. Realizing the base is deserted and useless, Brian rejoins Daniel. Daniel rashly drives the car, causing the engine to overheat. Brian checks the engine and suggests using their drinking water to reduce the engine heat. Daniel argues that there is no nearby water source to replenish their supply, but Brian convinces him that it's their only option. Brian manages to repair the car, allowing them to escape the zombie-infested area safely. Later, they find a water pump where they refill their bottles and rest briefly. As zombies begin to appear, they hurry back to the car and drive away. Night falls, and Brian accidentally hits a zombie, causing the car to veer off-road and crash into a tree. When they turn on the car lights, they see a horde of zombies nearby. They quickly leave the car and fight off the approaching zombies, and after killing them, Brian suggests resting and eating to regain strength. While studying a map, Daniel points out a path called the Devil's Claw, which they must cross to reach the military base. They set up a perimeter alarm and go to sleep. However, the alarm fails to wake them up when zombies attack during the night. The zombies bite Daniel and also attack Brian. Although Brian manages to kill the zombies, Daniel is mortally wounded and knows he will die. Brian carries Daniel to a tree where they say their goodbyes. After Daniel dies, Brian shoots him in the head to prevent him from turning into a zombie, then continues his journey alone. That night, Brian rests atop a tree, dropping his rifle to the ground. Zombies pass by, but can't reach him. The next morning, he resumes his journey and reaches the Devil's Claw. To cross it, Brian begins climbing the rocks, but zombies appear and follow him. He makes it to the top, drinks some water, and catches his breath before continuing. As Brian moves forward, he finds a zombie wearing a robe and takes it for himself. Exhausted and dehydrated, he collapses. When he wakes up, he sees a shelter surrounded by zombies. Determined, Brian launches a fierce attack, using his rifle and blade to kill every zombie. The survivors inside the shelter, astonished by his bravery, take him in. Inside the shelter, Brian asks the leader if they have any communication equipment. The leader informs him that the radio is broken. Brian repairs the radio and attempts to contact help. At first, there's no response, but eventually, a military friend replies. He informs Brian that his family is dead and that all positions are being evacuated due to relentless zombie attacks. As things worsen, zombies break into the shelter, attacking and killing everyone inside. Feeling defeated, Brian stands motionless by the wall when he suddenly notices Daniel's son among the survivors. Remembering his promise, Brian hands the boy Daniel's necklace, and the movie ends with Brian and the boy standing together, ready to face the zombie apocalypse as a team.